he's got his huge rescue swimmer radio right here. So he's like, it's so funny now thinking about it. He's like, rescue swimmer, tongue it to Dragon Slayer 611. It's like trying to figure out the right. I'm like, just talk.
I know. Yeah, just talk. We know it's you.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Calm in the Chaos podcast, where we discuss untold heroic experiences and dive into the mindset of the Navy's elite rescue swimmers. Hosted by former U.S. Navy Aviation rescue swimmer, Mount Everest solo summiteer, and best-selling author Brian Dickinson.
Hey everyone, it's Brian Dickinson. If you're enjoying these stories, please take a second to like, subscribe, and share the podcast. It helps more people find these conversations, and it keeps the mission alive. And if you want early access to new episodes and to support what we're building, consider becoming a Spotify paid subscriber. Your support means everything. Now let's jump in so others may live. Bill Beasley. Man, so 20 years as aviation rescue swimmer. Did a couple deployments. You're an instructor as well, right? Were you an instructor when I went through?
I was in, no. I didn't join until 92. Okay. So I was a little bit after your time.
Nice. Or a little before, an instructor after, I guess. Well, welcome. It's great to catch up with you. We were talking before hit record, but it's so cool just, after 3 decades or whatever, just to reconnect. So how you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Right on. Well, for those that don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, where are you from?
I grew up in a little town in Northern California, Vacaville, California.
Nice. I was born in Fairfield.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. My dad was in the Air Force, so we got stationed at Travis. So
okay. Yeah, my dad was working there as well. I guess that's why I was born there, and then he got rerouted somewhere else. Huh, funny. Small world.
Yeah. I grew up there, but I was born when my dad was stationed in Japan.
Well, cool. So you grew up in Vacaville for the most part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I grew up in Vacaville, and then when I turned 18, I moved to Texas to get to know my father because they divorced when I was 3. So I grew up in a single parent household. Not unusual for that time, for that era, if you will. And then when I turned 18, I moved to Texas. Got to know my father, and then joined the military from Texas in 1992. So from 87 to 92, I was in the Fort Worth, Dallas area.
Okay. Where are you now?
I'm in Newtown, Connecticut.
Oh, wow. Man, you're all over.
Yeah. It's it was kind of a thing where, we fly in Sikorsky aircraft, like that big bad boy behind you. And then, you get out, retire, and you try to find your way. But someone found me, a rescue swimmer who did the job like 15 years prior to me, reached out to a friend of his, Mike Hare. I don't know if you know who that is. He's a former HS guy. A good dude, by the way. Shout out to Mike Hare. So Pat Daly, who was another old school rescue swimmer, HSL, like cross trained guy, reached out to me. I had just retired, and I was teaching SERE in Fort Rucker, Alabama, sort of double dipping. You go on terminal leave and you find a job, and so I was a previous instructor, had SERE training. Got hired right on the spot, and then was working there about 10 months before I got the call from Sikorsky Aircraft. They needed someone to help them chase parts, and so I talked it over with my wife, and we moved up here I moved up here in 2013, and they moved up in 2014. So I was up here a year, kind of scouting out what the job really was, and I kind of jumped in with both feet, and I've been at Sikorsky ever since.
Awesome. So as far as SERE you say in Alabama,
Yeah,
was that like Army SERE?
it was, or it is still.
Yeah.
So the Army teaches SERE at Fort Rucker, at the Naval or Army Aviation Depot, Fort Rucker, or as it's affectionately known as Mother Rucker.
Hmm.
That's
Makes
where they
sense.
teach all their pilots, and then they have SERE school right on post.
Hmm. Now from the Army, so I'm not familiar with like Army SERE. I know like Air Force SERE is out here. I'm in just outside of Seattle, and
Hmm.
Air Force SERE is out in Spokane. From an Army perspective, like from the Navy, it's like special ops pilots, people that could, get in harm's way in
Yeah,
enemy territory. For the Army, like who goes through SERE?
yeah. There are levels of SERE in the Army, and we taught um, A, B, and C, but to the pilots of that post. So only pilots and aircrew went through that SERE school in Army. But there's Fort Hood has another set of contractors who work that contract for teaching SERE because it's well since 2013 SERE is taught on contract for the Army. I don't know if it's the same in the Navy, but back when I went through SERE, it was it was all active duty.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
everything's changed now.
yeah, so it's all taught by contract, and there's no you don't have to practice accents anymore. So it's a little different, but the concepts are the same both in the Navy and the Army. So you have evasion, you have being captured, and you do the other acronym,
Hmm.
the full gambit of SERE,
Uh-huh.
and then
Resistance escape.
um, the escape part is pretty interesting. But yeah, it's I went through um, a very small part of instructor training when I got hired, but because I was already an instructor and already had been through SERE, I just had to be refreshed on the pressures. So
Mm.
every morning, I get beat up a little bit, and I beat someone up, and then I get critiqued. We'd all critique ourselves on it. But what's really interesting that I wasn't aware of when I went through SERE is that when instructors pressure students in the evasion part and being captured and
Mhm.
practicing resistance, is that there is a 5-to-1 ratio, not the 6-to-1, but 5-to-1 ratio on instructors to student, because the idea is to help the student realize how important it is to be able to display the curriculum they were taught in the classroom, in the field. And sometimes instructors will pressure the students to a point where they, you can see the fist ball up on the side of there. You can see um, it takes a really good a person to be able to read the emotion on the person as you're pressuring them, and
Mhm.
then have a backup to be able to kind of
Yes.
deregulate or de-escalate the situation in case the student like loses their mind or whatever, which
Yep.
happened to me once. Um, but it was in the debrief. We had pressured one of his friends who was a female, and
Got
that really
protective.
upset him. So
Yeah, well, that's a key part of it, right? And
yeah.
like I interviewed a couple SERE instructors, SAR guys and girls that were and are still instructors for the book Calm in the Chaos, and it's one of those incredible courses. I mean, it's like the worst thing you can go through, but it's like you learn so much. But students are encouraged to fail because it's during that decompression stage afterward where you're going through everything and you realize, oh my gosh, I had no idea. I didn't even know there was multiple people in the room at the time because I was just
Yeah.
focused on the person that was putting that pressure, and then I was giving up all the secret information and way too easy or not at all, and then next thing I'm dead. It's like you get one extreme to the other, but it's afterward it's like, oh, okay, yeah, now I know, and that just makes you better equipped. Hopefully nothing like that ever happens in real life, But it's funny how even that training, how it can just alter your personality to, I don't know, just to interact with other humans throughout life and other situations where you kind of have that bend but don't snap mentality. And, you don't even realize it. Other people will point it out. And it's like, yeah, it's a very effective school. I'd imagine like being an instructor versus, because you went through in the 90s as a victim, as an inmate,
Yeah.
and and then being on the flip side of that, that must just be for most, it's like it's traumatizing. You never even want to even, hear the word SERE again or go back. But to be back and be on the instructing end, it must be really rewarding. But at the same time, you're kind of balancing that, you're not the victim anymore. You're in control. And I guess the training probably gets you prepped for that.
Yes. So we have a huge huddle before every class, and then as as the class day approaches, we get more and more ready through briefing. The class size, the makeup of the class, how many officers, how many warrant officers, how many enlisted. If we can get any background, because there's like 2.5 weeks of classroom. So
Mhm.
I worked in the field part of it. So I was on the capture team. So we would walk into the classroom, sit in the back, and we just kind of watch the interaction of the students to see if we can spot any, but it didn't happen often where we would spot someone that we would feel would have to be taken aside and say, hey man, this is just a school. This is not,
Mhm. Hey, if you love high stakes action, military intrigue, and stories that keep you turning pages late into the night, you won't want to miss my new thriller, Bloodline of Redemption. From a rogue Russian submarine on a covert nuclear mission to the unforgiving peaks of the world's deadliest mountains, it's a nonstop ride of suspense and survival. Order your copy now on Amazon or wherever books are sold and dive into the mission.
there is an element of realness to it, because our job is to help the student realize how important this kind of training is under pressure, right?
Yeah.
So the difference between being an instructor and a student, yes, it was so bad. I still think about being thrown up against that soft wall behind me, being hard cell interrogated, to the point where I wouldn't give up anything. But in my mind, I was like, well, I in the back of my mind, I know I'm getting beat, but I know I won't die, and I know it's training, so they're not going to kill me. So I'm going to maintain my I'm going to maintain my bearing, and then see what happens, right? So at one point, the instructor pulled out a fake gun and pointed it at my head and asked me, what the issue was, whatever the secret I had to keep.
Mhm.
And I was acting like I was a dummy, right? Part of
Mhm.
the various steps you have to take or whatever. And they were like, whoa, training timeout. And then
Mhm.
they said, look, if you're going to be killed, and I remember this vividly. The guy came out of character, had a Russian accent. All of a sudden, he was
Mhm.
talking like he was from down the street from me. And he was like, look, if you are in a situation where you are going to be killed, give them some information that will pull the gun away from your forehead, or pull the life expectancy down to zero up
Mhm.
to a reasonable amount. But this is why we do this, because I mean, back then it was a little different. So maybe they were a little
Mhm.
rougher back then. We had some TTOs that we had to um, maintain. So we weren't allowed to rough up students to the point where they would get hurt or anything. But the pressures are slightly different. There are some things that I was exposed to when I went through SERE school that we weren't doing in 2012. Um, so it's just a little different. But I will say the training is just as effective. Um,
Mhm.
in
I
my
see that across the board, even like SARS school and everything. It's things they always look different. And even for me, people always ask like, what's next? Because I've done some adventures. It's like, well, in my 50s, I'm still adventurous, but things just look different. Yep. Yep. We're in our 50s. They just look different, and they're doesn't mean they're less effective. I mean, it's real in, the training, just because we went through when things were maybe different for the wrong reasons, um, didn't mean that they were more effective back then. They may seem it because we made it through and we survived everything else, but there's always better ways to do things.
Yeah.
When that
Yeah.
pendulum swings too far to the left or right, that's when we have problems.
But I will say that instructor job was a great transition role coming out of the military, because TAP was adequate, but doesn't prepare you for what life is like really on the outside. It really doesn't.
Yeah.
And but that kind of job was a great transition job coming out of the military. And then things drastically changed when I took the job at Sikorsky.
Yeah. Now we're jumping all over the place, but just such an interesting journey that you've been on. Let's hop back to so you were in Texas, and some reason you decided to go in the Navy. What drew you
Yeah.
to the Navy?
What precipitated the begin the journey? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was 23 when I joined, and initially, I was doing pretty well for myself. I had a job at a bread company. I was delivering bread for quite a few years. The job was great. The hours kind of weren't. The hours weren't good, because I worked from 4 a.m. until 2 p.m, delivering fresh bread.
Oh, and I bet the
And,
people baking it were working from midnight
midnight
to
till
4.
yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I was one piece of that. I was a delivery man to the store, and then I worked 6 days a week, had one day off, and it was great. But I had no social life. So
Let me ask you this. When you were, because it would smell so good, right? Just fresh baked bread. When you were delivering, did you ever like sneak like take one piece of a loaf and then like try to fit it all back in there?
no, but that's pretty funny though. It was a great job. So I did that for 4 years, and then I really wanted something different. I I knew that there was something more for me out there, and my attitude towards work was this helps me live my life in a lifestyle in which I want to create for myself.
Mm-hmm.
But what I didn't have is purpose in the job. I did the job so I can have a life outside.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted something different. So I had a conversation with my dad, and he was like, well, you can join the Air Force. I've been in, he was an active guard person for 35 years. At that time, it was way before that. Probably at that time, he was in his 20-year
Mm-hmm.
era. So I did go to the Air Force, but there was a 24-month waiting list, and I wanted to get away now, and I wanted to do something right away. So I went over to the Navy, and this fire controlman first class was really chill, really, really awesome. And he said, you can leave in 3 days. What do you want to do? And I was like, well, I'm signed up for this thing called pararescue for the Air Force, but there's a 24-month waiting list. And he goes, well, you can leave now, but there's no, we do have rescue, he explained to me the whole thing about being a rescue swimmer. But there were no slots open, but there was a possibility it could open if I went undesignated.
Ooh.
Yeah. And that's, I didn't know what I didn't know then, which in reality kind of helped me out in the future, which we'll get into in a little bit. But I joined the Navy undesignated in 1992, and that's when the journey began. October 2. Same year and month, and same boot camp as Justin Tate, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice. Good dude. Wow. Well, think about it, man. You got a fork in the road. If you would have went Air Force, man, they heard that you were like eating day old cake. They're like, man, you are overqualified for what we're about to bring you into. And instead you end up in the Navy with the Justin Tate, and let's head down that path.
Yeah. So 1992, go through boot camp, then go to ATD, which is the school for undesignated airmen. So I chose the airman path because my dad said, he was in the Air Force, and he goes, took me to the Chiefs Club before I joined. Just we're jumping back a little bit, but took me to the Chiefs Club at the joint base he was working on in Granbury, Texas. And this old crusty Navy chief was like, "You need to be an airman," And I was like, "Okay, just make sure you got green stripes on your shoulder." And
made no sense at the time, but
yeah,
excellent advice.
And then another guy sitting right next to him, he goes, "You don't want to be a black shoe. You need to be a brown shoe." And I had no idea what those terms meant at the time. And they stuck in my mind. Only because my dad was an aviator. He was a loadmaster on C-130s, wore a flight suit every day, and I dug that. I dug that look, right? But I didn't know the job, or the dedication and effort to be able to earn that was. So jumping back into graduating ATD, I get orders to basically the last place I wanted to go, which was back to California. I got stationed in Lemoore with VFA 97 and F-18 squadron, just transitioning from A7s to F-18 Alphas.
Yeah.
I did 2.5 years there, made third class.
So what was your job with?
I was in the line check. Sorry.
Okay.
So I checked into VFA 97. They put me in the line check right away. In boot camp, I got meritoriously promoted to E3. And I showed up as a E3 to the squadron. And so that made me eligible to take the third class exam right away. And so I called my dad, which then had a conversation with one of his old crusty chief buddies, and said, "What should I do?" Because I had the opportunity to choose whatever path to go, any rate, basically, that didn't require an A school. And every rate, aviation-wise, doesn't require an A school except for AT, AW, AE, and that's it. Those are the three rates. So I went and talked to the career counselor upstairs, some YN1, and he goes, "Well, AZ is 100% promotion based on the numbers and blah, blah, blah." So I took the third class test for AZ3 6 months after I get there. And I made—
What is an AZ?
Aviation Administrative Maintenance Man. So the person who works in maintenance control behind the chief, shuffling paperwork. Or I'm pretty sure that when you were in the fleet, they had like DOS computers and stuff. Well, back then we worked on math papers in Lemoore anyway. And then we graduated to computers while I was there.
Okay.
But I was a maintenance control desk guy after. So I made third class, first time up, zero experience in the Navy. And we had like tons of E3s and guys that have been there about 1.5 years longer than me that were qualified plane captain. I wasn't even qualified plane captain, by the way.
Oh man, they're all pissed off at you.
They were so upset. But I was a frocked third class, not getting paid. So they treated me like an E3. That the LPO was kind of also like, who's this dude? But he treated me fairly. Salomonsky, shout out to AD1 Salamoski.
All right.
He gave me some advice that I kind of stuck with me my whole career, is that you can't worry about what other people think. You just got to get after what you need to get after and not worry about anybody else.
Amen. Yeah, just everyone's out for themselves. You know, a lot of people brave behind a keyboard and everything else, especially in the world we live in today. So, I mean, that advice will carry on forever. Great advice.
Yeah. So again, you got to think in the line shack, you got a frock third class who's not qualified to do anything except carry chains.
Yep.
So I made it a goal to get qualified. So in maybe 2.5 months, I went before the plane captain's board, got qualified. And I had to spend 6 months in the shack after I got qualified, even though I was a third class. Started getting paid, started operating as a plane captain. We went on deployment in the middle of that. Working in the line shack on a deployment is 12 on, 12 off as a non-aviator.
Mm-hmm.
So that experience really helped me see what life is like on the other side, on one side, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rather than being an AW, wearing a flight suit, going on a 6-month deployment, which is so different.
Yeah, man, it really makes you appreciate.
Yeah. Like I used to tell stories to guys when I got picked up to be an AW, about what life is like not being an AW on a deployment. So it went through in one ear and out the other on most of those kids, but it helped me realize how thankful I am to be picked up. So anyway, so 2 years as a third class, got switched over to maintenance control, but every year I had to get requalified as a plane captain, and then right before I was getting out of the Navy at 6 months, I thought, well, the dream of being a pararescueman is kind of over. The Navy, the squadron didn't give me like great vibes about what the Navy life was like, because I was looking at the trees, not the forest.
Mm-hmm.
And my experience as a young sailor was less than ideal, meaning that the deployments kind of sucked, and we went to Japan. It was typical Westpac. I was on the West Coast, so typical Westpac. Go to Hawaii.
What carrier were you
on? Let's see.
For that one,
Constellation.
Nice.
The Constellation was the first carrier, and then we did a bunch of like 6 and 8 week debts on the Nimitz. We did some detachments on the Nimitz as well. So one of the detachments on the Nimitz, I was about ready. I had 6 months left, and it was a time for me to get requalified. So they asked me to take a brand newbie, a new brand new sailor that was in the line shack up to the flight deck, and this was still around the time when like hazing was still looked at as being kind of okay, still like after tailhook, but prior to being fully implemented, lots of training being put out. So I didn't prescribe to all that stuff, even though it happened to me. I was hung from the overhead, my shirt taken off, and basically red bellied. That was horrible. That was not a less than ideal experience, but I went through it, and I even have pictures to prove it, which I will never show anybody.
Give them to me. I won't show anyone.
No, we're good.
Want to show your support for Calming the Chaos and the stories of our nation's elite rescue swimmers? Check out our exclusive merch line, shirts, hats, and stickers designed for those who live with courage and purpose. Military and first responders get 10% off each order. Just use the code SARRESCUE10, SARRESCUE, the number 10, SARRESCUE10, at checkout. Grab yours today on Amazon or briandickinson.net/store and wear your support proudly so others may live.
Anyway, so we go up to the flight deck, and he's I'm carrying the tool belt and he's carrying all the chains, right? So waiting, I pre-flighted this aircraft. The troubleshooters behind me or ahead of me were doing some work on the nose gear, but they were about ready to sign it off. And the maintenance chief was like, this bird can't go without this map being signed off for the nose gear. And so an AT2 that I know, I won't say his name, but he'd gone off and signed off the map, came back upstairs to be the troubleshooter after, that they basically taxi around to the JBD and then launch from, and then me and the other plane captain are just kind of standing there waiting for this bird to launch off. Well, the pilot, his name is Ed Harshaney. He launched, the nose wheel collapsed, and then all the ball bearings bounced up and fought it out both engines.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So he ejects about not even 100 feet after takeoff, maybe 200 feet after takeoff. And then the jet flies 5 miles out, continues until it hits the water. Well, Ed Harshaney hits the water, and then all of a sudden I see this helicopter come in from, because we all race to the deck edge to see if we can spot the parachute. Well, here comes HS4, who was part of our CAG. HS4 launched a swimmer, picked him up, brought him back to the deck. And of course, when there's a mishap like this, everybody kind of gets quarantined and sent down to, do their medical stuff.
Yep.
So me and this kid walked down and we're about to give blood and pee and do all the stuff we need to do. And here is Blue. His call sign is Blue. Steve Ayers is his name. Steve Ayers is a retired warrant officer now, but back then he was a crusty old third class AW. Shout out to Steve.
Steven Ayers? Oh, yeah. No, we were good friends. We were like best friends for a long time. In fact, I'm going to have him on.
Oh, well, this is a great story because he knows the story.
Awesome.
So we're sitting down. That's Ed Harshaney was his rescue, by the way. So we're sitting down in medical, and I go, "Are you an officer?" And he goes, "F no, I'm not an officer. I'll just say it." He was like, "Fuck no, I'm not an officer." And I go, "I think I want to do that." And I had less than 6 months. I think we're like 4 weeks into a 6-week deployment and or detachment. And so I run up and I talk to the senior chief who was in charge of QA at the time. That's where I was working. I was working the pubs library for the squadron. And I was like, "Well, senior chief, I know what I want to do. I don't think I want to get out anymore. I think I want to become a rescue swimmer." He goes, and what I didn't realize is that he was wearing a set of wings and he was a 46 crewman, a frog crewman.
Oh, wow.
I didn't know that. I understood all of the air warfare devices, but I never asked him about the gold wings he was carrying on his chest rather than the dolphins and the ESWAS, right? So I asked him, I said, "Do you think I can do it?" And he goes, I don't think you're going to be able to do something like that. It seems too hard for you. And
thanks for the encouragement. Man. Yeah.
Well, it did the exact opposite of what it was, reverse psychology, basically. Yeah. And I took that as a challenge. And so I said, I was like taken aback, and I was like, "What do you think? Why don't you think I can make it?" And he goes, "Well, number one, you're an AZ, and AZs don't do a lot of, you guys are, sort of bitch and betties, right?" Like he called us AZs bitch and betties.
Okay.
And so a couple of weeks later, I was able to. He actually, even though he said I wouldn't make it, he was still helping me with the package along the way to get it ready to send off. And so I got the package ready, and I was already third class, got accepted, got orders to Pensacola. And before he left, he goes, "Well, I know you're going to be back here in about 3 weeks anyway, picking up your stuff, but good luck." And that was his send off. And I was like, "Screw you, dude." Like I was really upset about the way he was minimizing because I had to go down to San Diego to take the swim test and the swimmer fitness test.
Mm-hmm.
which Lemoore paid, my squadron paid for me to go fly down there and do this on a weekend into the next week. And then I had 3 days off in Coronado. Fast forward to getting qualified, I go off to rescue swimmer school. I graduate.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get rolled back or anything, and I come
Nice.
back to, like, all my stuff is in storage. So I go back and I pick up all my stuff in storage, and the senior chief is still there. And I went up to his office, and I looked different. I was a little bit thinner, but also, like, I had much better upper body strength,
Yeah,
and
no kidding. You're
I wore
super
my
fit.
uniform so much differently back then.
Yeah.
And so I was still wearing the AZ insignia because I hadn't gone through AWA school yet. But
Okay.
after rescue swimmer, I came back to get my stuff in between rescue swimmer school and A school. And he's like, "I knew you'd make it," the senior chief. And I was like, "No, you didn't." And he goes, "Yes, I did." And I realized what his whole thing was reverse psychology. He goes, "Do you know what these are?" And I go, "Yeah, I didn't know back then, but I know now." And he explained to me how important it was to not disrespect the what's on your chest. So you still have a lot to go. You still have a lot to earn. This is his conversation to me. You still have a lot to
Mm-hmm.
go. You still have a lot to earn. But remember where you came from, and take care of those people that are coming up behind you. And
Yeah.
I remember that to this day. So
That's incredible. That's a cool story. There's so many different methodologies of leadership, and they don't work for every individual. You know, each one's unique, but in that moment, that's what you needed. You know, who knows how it would have went if he was like, "Oh, you're gonna make it, and you're gonna do awesome." When, you know, like that encouragement or whatever might have been like, might have softened it. So let's go back. So you went through aircrew and then SAR school. So you made it through, but you took like 3 seconds to tell that
yeah,
story. Let's
sorry.
let's talk about SAR school. Like what were the biggest challenges?
Um, well, I guess the biggest challenge was my first challenge was aircrew school as a fleet returnee, um, and the differences between how you were treated as a fleet returnee versus how new 18-year-olds coming out of boot camp were treated.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a lot different because in the fleet, nobody called you petty officer. They just call you by your last name or your first name in the fleet, right? So, and the connotation of using the word petty officer back then was kind of a cuss word, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, some boot camp, we call them boots, but some new person walking. Do you remember Ducks,
Ducks?
the restaurant?
No.
It was right behind aircrew school. I don't think it's there anymore, but
Okay. Yeah.
there was a restaurant, anyway. So I was walking out of that restaurant, and they were walking past me, and they're like, "Good morning, petty officer." And I turned around, I was like, "What the fuck did you just say?" Like, I was pissed off. And they turned around and got to attention, and I was like, "Man, I have a name, you know," like, and they're like, and I just
Yeah, they don't know.
walk away. And so this was the day before the morning of check-in for aircrew school, and I'm a fleet returnee. So I'm living in a barracks separate, like, with like room service, and they make your bed every morning, and it's a lot better.
Wow.
And I walk over to the aircrew school, and I'm sitting in a classroom being introduced to the instructors. He goes, "Any fleet returnees in here?" And a couple of us raise our hand. And they're like, "Okay, so you're going to get called petty officer a lot. Don't take offense to that." And I was like, "Oh, Jesus." And the person that I just yelled at the morning before, there was two of them. They both turned around and looked at me and gave me that, like, that look, like,
Yeah, of course they're right there. Like, oops.
we're in the same class. Yeah. So after we got all of our introduction stuff, and there was a chance for us to kind of mill about a little bit, I went over to those two people, and I was like, "I'm so sorry. I'm from the fleet. It's different. I'll be better."
Yeah. That's
And that
good.
was that. That
So,
was challenge number one.
mhm.
And then challenge number two was the SFT. You have to do an SFT. All the rescue swimmers that are going to rescue swimmer school have to do an SFT, or
What does that stand for?
a swimmer fitness test.
Okay.
And that's the swimming 500 meters in less than 12, and all the push-ups and pull-ups and sit-ups and run.
Mm-hmm.
So there was four of us, and I was the oldest one at 26, 27. I'd already started getting called pops, by the way, at
Oh yeah,
27 years old.
isn't that crazy? Like your grandpa at that point.
Yeah. So I failed the swim by 3 seconds at 12:03. And then so the whole class was like, because I was the assistant. No, I'm sorry, I was a class leader. And they're like, okay, so we have another swim test in the morning. We'll set you up for the swim test in the morning. We'll do it all over again. So the other three kids passed. Kevin Freenor was in my class. John Watson was in my aircrew and rescue swimmers class, and a couple other kids that ended up doing great things in the Navy as swimmers during their career. Anyway, so Freenor was the fastest swimmer because he was a collegiate, not a collegiate, but a high school state champion, and he was just lapping the crap out of me on the 500 meter, and I was getting a little discouraged, but also I realized that once I failed, there was no way I was going to fail again. So I just had to put my head down and just get after it. And I remember those words from 81 Salomonsky. He said, "Don't worry about anybody else. Just get after what you need to get after, and not worry about anything else." Mm-hmm. So I went back to the room, slept, and got back up for the class in the morning and passed the SFT with like an 11-minute 52. Like I was good. Mm-hmm. So that was the challenge number two. And then aircrew school was 5 weeks back then. I don't know what it is now, but 5 weeks. So we passed that, and then we had to march over and get classed up for rescue swimmer school. But what was really interesting about the transition from aircrew school to rescue swimmer school was the demeanor of the instructors. They were serious, but also encouraging. But if you showed any sign of giving up or like not putting in 100% effort, they would be on your shit quicker than white on rice. Yeah. It was just incredibly different in the amount of attention that the instructors would give to the students in our effort. And and there was no letting up, it seemed like. So from the challenges in rescue swimmer school were completely different mindset wise versus the challenges I faced in aircrew school, which wasn't more like people oriented in aircrew school. And in rescue swimmer school, it was definitely the effort and realizing that you had to put forth the type of effort that made sure that you didn't get the instructor's ire, So I just remember always thinking, I can't slack off, because the minute I slack off, I'm going to get all the attention. And maybe that was only my perception. But I remember distinctly getting that feeling where if I don't put out the effort, then I'm going to be looked at as being the slacker, and I'm going to get all the attention.
Yeah. You don't want to get labeled. Well, now, since you were your grandpa at this point, were you class leader or anything?
I was the assistant class leader. We had this AT2 show up from HSC 85, who was a dry crewman. And he wanted to be a swimmer. So he showed up as a class leader. Good dude. I can't remember his name. And I don't think he stayed in that long. We had a first class come in from HSC 84 that was also a dry crewman who was like in his mid 30s,
Mm-hmm.
who was going through rescue swimmer school at the time too. But he was not the class leader. I guess he had talked to the instructors and was like, "Dude, I just want to put my head down. I don't even know if I'm going to make it, but I'm going to." This
Oh
was
gosh.
our conversation afterwards.
Good attitude.
He's like, "I don't know if I'm going to make it, and the last thing I want to do is have the responsibility of getting my ass kicked for somebody else's mistake. Just let me be back of the class, back of the line, dude. Are you guys good with that?" And they're like, "Okay." So some deal was worked out where this first class was not the class leader, but this AT2 from the sister squadron was the class
Mm-hmm.
leader. So,
Okay. What year was this?
96.
Okay.
So, 9614 is my class number.
Nice. Nice. So then, as far as challenges, so you go through, I mean, there's the physical, obvious, that weeds a lot of people out. The mental, life saving is a huge weeder outer.
Yeah.
And then multis, like what was the most challenging for you?
Clearing my mask. That was the big challenge for me. I could not get the putting on the mask and then, up top and then breathing and
Mm-hmm.
clearing the mask and then getting above the water and then saying your full name and social, right? I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
get that. And so during the class evolution where you had to swim out as, like a set of 4, swim out, take off your mask, drop to the bottom, come out, then come up and do your thing.
Mm-hmm.
I had 3 chances and I failed all 3 chances. And so, no encouragement, nothing from the instructors. They're like, okay. So, at the end of the day, I was like, I am not going to get rolled back. I got to get this done. And so instructor corps, I can't even remember who it was. But one of the instructors came up to me and said, "Hey, someone's going to be here. A couple of instructors are going to be here in the morning, and we're going to peel you off, and we're going to get the clear your mask evolution complete. Do you understand?" And I was like, "Roger that." So they peeled me off from the class. They went for a run, and I was in the pool with the entire instructor cadre, not with the class. So there was like 8, 9 instructors around the pool deck and a safety swimmer in the water. One of the senior chiefs he goes, "Petty Officer Beasley." He goes, "Get your shit in one sock." And I was flutter kicking and my hands above the water with my mask on. He goes, "Get your shit in one sock." And I was like, "Roger that, instructor." And I can't remember his last name, but I began the evolution, dropped my mask, and then literally as I was at the bottom of the pool putting on the mask, I kept thinking, if I fail this is it. This is it. I'm either going to get rolled back or going to have to pick another rate. But we were all told about the rolling back into the previous class. But I didn't want to do that because this thing in my head was like, you got it. If you want something, you got to get after it. Don't worry about what anybody else says. And
Yep.
So I was able to clear my mask, came up, said my name, and the senior chief was like, "Was that so hard?" And I was like, "Yes, senior chief, it was very hard." But I passed and met
That's
up with the
awesome.
class and continued on. Everything else in rescue swimmer school was hard, but doable because you have the support of the classmates. Like I remember after multis one day, we were just talking about like procedure, right? So we're in the locker room, and some of us were doing controlled cross-assist carries and controlled holes and doing everything on land. How to push away and I remember we're just helping everybody. In the 2.5 minutes that you had to get dressed between multis, getting your uniform on, and marching to wherever you need to march. So we were very efficient about helping each other out, but it worked out.
Yeah, and that's what's interesting is it's early on in the program, it's this weed out, and then you quickly realize you need each other, you can help each other. And even though it's kind of an individual thing because you got to pass individually, a lot of times as an instructor, if you're helping others, you're helping yourself as well. So it's the camaraderie just, I don't know, it just turns to glue like really quickly at some point. And, because it is 4 or 5 week course, you don't have a lot of time.
No,
And
not at all.
I think even the people that get rolled back, I mean, they can go in and just so many people that get rolled back to the next class end up passing through because now you have time to reflect, and you also have time because you become that experienced individual to help the next class. And you needed that in that moment. I'm curious from a mass clearing perspective, like what was it? Was it like a seal on it? Was it just your ability to remain calm that you were able to overcome? Or
I think it was just getting not being calm in the evolution. Um, I always had a thing about, and I'll tell you this now, 30 years and passing, going through that course, almost 25 years actually. That I had a thing about water going up my nose. It was just something I'd been in the water my whole life, and I'd always had this thing about water going up my. But I never did the plug your nose when you're diving in or plug your
Mhm.
nose while you're swimming underwater. I never did that. But for whatever reason, when I went upside down or did flips as a kid underwater, I'd always like spend minutes clearing my nose and stuff because I'd end up getting colds from being in a chlorinated water a lot
Mm.
as a
Okay.
kid and growing up. So it was a mental block more than anything. And
And
so
it might be something physiological as well, if you're more prone to something. So it's just something you had to overcome.
yeah, I ended up after rescue swimmer school getting rhinusitis, which is a pretty massive nose um, allergy to certain, I don't know, like the pollen in the air.
Hmm.
But it was so bad going to Jacksonville, Florida, that I had to go see a doctor and get waivers to continue to fly for about a year. And then it just sort of went away. Just like, your body gets used to all the pollen in the area you live in. For some
Hmm.
reason, the pollen in Jacksonville just really hit me different. So I had
Interesting.
to full year used to that.
Yeah, so you're overcoming all that. So you graduated, you went through AW, well, once you went back and got your gear from your old squadron,
Hmm.
came in AW, went through SERE, all of the stuff, HS-10, and then from there, I know we can jump into like you had, was it Hurricane Floyd you're involved in?
September 17th, 1999.
Cool. Let's talk about that.
I checked into HS-11 in 1997 or December of 96. I checked into HS-11, and so there was a lot of old, guys that have been there a while that were leaving. So I was somebody's replacement. Um,
Mhm.
but it was at the end of that era's team, and I was just a new guy as part of that team. So getting to know that element of that, or that makeup of that shop, was pretty good. But then they all transferred out, and we got all new folks, leadership, and E5 down,
Mhm.
E7, E8 and down, all transferred out. And so I
Wow.
transfer in January, and like literally in the 6 months that I was there, there was people leaving. So that kind of hindered the training track for me, because everybody was leaving and new people were showing up, and they assumed that I knew more than what I was just so junior, but I was single. So new leadership, new folks, but there was 11 guys from HS10 that showed up at HS11, 11 E4s that I went through all of my training with. So it was
Mhm.
great to be around people that I felt comfortable around, even though I was a fleet returnee. But once
Mhm.
you go through that kind of training with those kids, you all become so close and so
Sure.
bonded. That
Yeah.
doesn't matter. So all these folks were showing up from HS10 out to the West Coast, and 11 of them show up to HS11, the shop I was in. So so there was a Jacksonville, Florida's hurricane prone during certain times of year. So October, I'd been there about 10 months and still super junior, but I was like, I was ASO qualified, which means that you can. It's just a progression track that you go that you're on as an AW in the HS world. So ASO, TSO, and then on the CSAR side, it's second crewman, crew chief. So I was second crewman qualified, and I was ASO qualified on the PQS. In September, Hurricane Floyd was coming through, and it was one of the largest hurricanes on the East Coast in a while. And at one point, it was bigger than the state of Texas. So the Weather Service had predicted that hurricane was going to come in and hit Jacksonville. So they moved the entire Atlantic fleet in Mayport out to sea. So the Kennedy was sitting at Mayport. So to make up the debt that's going to take the Kennedy out and basically wait out the storm was a bunch of single people. So it was two E5s, both single, and then all of the single E4s. And that was it. That was a shop. So we went out to sea with two E5s and 12 E4s. And I just happened to be like chronologically the oldest person on this little detachment. But we were all friends. So this was on September 15th. So a day goes in. We're just standing watches. We got the birds tied down on the flight deck, and I just happened to be standing watch that night of 16 going into 17 September, and we get called for a tugboat sinking, and there were 8 people on the tugboat. And so, and it was right in the middle of the hurricane. So this tugboat was towing this 100,000-ton barge from the Carolinas down to Cuba or somewhere in the Caribbean. So they were right in the middle of the storm. They couldn't move out of the way, so they ended up powering through it and sunk their tugboat, 8 of them. So we got called, and we're sitting. I think the carrier is somewhere west of the datum, and we get called in to go directly into the storm. So as we're making our way into the storm, we have to go up. We send the entire squadron up to basically 24 chain the aircraft because it's a hurricane. So there's actually YouTube video of an H-60 on the nose of the aircraft carrier when it's accepting a 30-foot swell right over the top and just covers the Foxtrot. That was us. That was our squadron.
Check that out.
So we're headed out that way, and I was on watch, so they send me to CIC to basically get all the information for the SAR crews, and it was early in the morning. So we weren't going to wake anybody up until we knew exactly where everybody was, and at least got eyes on the barge. So Coast Guard C-130 was up flying around, and they had spotted it and gave us the datum, and then we launched our 2 Alert 30. So I was on watch. The 2 aircraft came around, and they found. They found of the 8, 5 of them were in a raft, and 3 of them were separate, wearing their poopy suits, holding on to a broomstick and an ELT, so that they can stay together. And so, just to give you an idea of what the storm was like, we were walking the walls on an aircraft carrier, which is absolutely insane. If you've ever been on a small boy out at sea in choppy weather, or maybe doing an unrep next to a carrier, the relative motion of a small buoy is definitely a lot different than the relative motion of a carrier based on size, right? Um, and being on a small buoy out at sea doing small deck operations in rough weather, you can walk the walls on a small deck or a small ship. Well, it was crazy on the Kennedy, because I'd never experienced that kind of motion on an aircraft carrier, and I never got seasick or airsick or whatever, but it was real interesting to see how people reacted to
I
being able to
bet.
walk the walls on a carrier.
Yeah, that's scary.
Yeah,
That's a
so
big boat to be rocking that far.
that's how. So the seas were about 40 feet, 45 feet, and the winds were about 90 knots. And this is into like in the storm itself. So imagine a little foxtrot with no radar, just tech in, just alone and unafraid. Two aircraft kind of flying
Mm-hmm.
in formation, looking for at 200 feet, looking for what looks to be the top of a washing machine. Like it's just really hard to spot. But they found the three first, and then found the five in the raft later. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that's a whole different. I've rehashed this with a lot of people, but that rescue, we had two swimmers in each aircraft. Again, I'm on watch, so we're hearing all the radio comms in the ready room about how this is all going down. So Bird One, who has Shad Hernandez as a rescue swimmer, goes down. He did the five in the life raft, and then Timmy Limmerman and Wallace Gainey, who is a hoist operator, had done the Mike Tungett was a second swimmer, and they did the three holding on to the ELT and the broomstick. So as they were all coming, as the last as the aircraft were coming back from the five individuals in the raft, another call comes in for a container ship that lost its engine and was foundering at sea, and their chief engineer had broken his back. So I was still on watch, but we had no crewmen to fill the need for a crew, right? So I immediately grabbed the OPSO at the time, who was Joey D'Angelo, great stick. Joey D'Angelo says, Beasley, you and Tungett are going to be the crew. And I was junior to Mike Tungett, so I was like, oh shit, I'm gonna get a rescue. This is crazy. So Mike Tungett says, hey man, if you want to be the crew chief, you can, but that's Mike being Mike. He's now a pastor. But he goes, I'll be the swimmer. And he was senior to me. So I was like, okay, so I became but I was an inexperienced second crewman with hardly any time in the aircraft. And I wasn't even qualified TSO at the time. I was barely a qualified ASO.
Yeah.
And
these are not ideal conditions.
And Mike is a fully qualified TSO and crew chief on that platform. And we were both third classes, but he had been there a lot longer than me. Mm-hmm. So we set up to go, and we get up to the flight deck, and we take off, and we find the container ship has two cranes on either end of the ship, which are just kind of going, like they were just rocking back and forth, and we had to hover above that, but it was way above 200 feet, so we needed to get down below 200 feet to lower the hoist to do the things we needed to do. So we had to hover in between these two humongous cranes sticking on this class 3 container ship. Yeah. And the way that we approached it, so Joey DeAngelo was the pilot in controls, and Ruben Ramos, call sign Cheater, was the pilot not at controls, junior pilot, just like me. We showed up at the squadron at the same time. Greatest man, greatest pilot on Earth, super funny, hilarious, but at the time, just he was a very, not even H2P qualified. He was that kind of pilot, brand new, just like me, ish. So we're flying out there, and Joey D's like got the controls. We're going through the checklist, and we spot the container ship. We kind of circle it. We bring them up on channel 16, find out what's going on, and we find out that the captain is a Russian with broken English skills, and his crew is mostly Russian and Ukrainian, and the chief engineer is Filipino, who speaks pretty good English, but he's passed out and has a broken back. So we asked someone, is there anybody that speaks English on that ship? And of course, some person comes on the radio and speaks better broken English. And we basically find out what the situation is with the survivor. What's his condition? Does he have a pulse? Is he awake? All that stuff before we even, we're still flying around in circles around the ship. And so we make the decision. Joey DeAngelo is asking me what I want to do. And I'm like, we're going to have to litter this guy out. And Mike Tungett is like getting dressed out. He's like off his helmet, getting dressed out. He knows he's going to go in. But I'm trying to figure out a way to be able to hover, and the pilots too. We're all just, the people who are going to remain in the aircraft are deciding what to do about how to approach this massive problem with two cranes going up and down. It could possibly damage the aircraft if we get any lower than necessary. So we asked the ship if they had drivability, and they said, well, we can maintain steerage, but we have no engine. So we're like, okay, steer into the wind and maintain direction into the wind. We'll give you line of direction, bearing in which to maintain steerage of the ship. So we do that. So we're into the wind, and then what's not working is I can't see the crane behind me, but I can't see the crane in front of me, but it gets out of my vision as because I'm the guy kind of directing traffic, if you will, to make sure we maintain safety. Sure. So I was like, I can't see to maintain any kind of, I don't feel comfortable in this position. We need to have the ship offset 30 degrees so that I have visual of both cranes at any time. So we asked them to maintain a 30-degree offset. We come in, and it turns out that we had better ability to drop the swimmer in amidships than we did both at the other end, or they had somehow moved the container, moved it in another spot, so there's a flat area to basically slide Mike in to do his job. So we lowered Mike in on the first actual hover to deploy the swimmer 60 feet down the wire. Actually, this was more like 85 to 100 feet down the wire.
It's probably fluctuating, huh?
But the whole time in the hover, Joey D is flying it and we're rock steady. There's no deviation. I give him a direction: easy right, easy left, easy forward, altitude 5 feet, whatever. It just happened. He was that good of a pilot. So I'm giving direction while giving him a picture like we're supposed to do in training. But I will say though that being as inexperienced, what HS 10 teaches you is exactly what you're supposed to do in any situation scenario. And it's so basic and so available to me as a crewman that I didn't think about the gravity of the situation. I just worried about what I need to do right there in the moment. And if I'm saying the right words to the pilot. So as I'm directing traffic, and Mike's going in and raising the hook, and he does everything he's supposed to do. He gets on deck, unhooks himself, throws the hook overboard, and because we're briefing this the whole time, I'm like, I don't want the hook to get caught on anything on the ship. So when you get down there, throw the hook overboard with the rescue strap. Don't worry about it. It's not gonna, just throw it overboard. And he's like, roger that. And so then we take off, and we're just doing laps around we're not remaining in a hover because it's too dangerous. So we take off, we're Mike makes it up into the bridge, which is aft of the container ship, goes up to like 7 flights of stairs, a set, he's got his huge rescue swimmer radio right here. So he's like it's so funny now thinking about it. He's like, rescue swimmer Tonga to Dragon Slayer 611. It's like trying to figure out the right. I'm like, just
I know.
Talk.
Yeah, just talk. We know it's you.
Yeah. And so he goes, yeah, this guy's like, he's being held up against the bulkhead with a bunch of blankets. We're going to need the litter. I'm like, yeah, I'm working on it. Right. So as we're doing laps, I'm like asking Joey D and Ruben to kind of keep an eye on where, what I'm listening to the radios, and I'm getting the litter ready, and got the trail line ready to go. And I'm looking at the trail line assembly, making sure that, okay, I was like, fuck, man, is this right? Like I was just in my head, I was like, man, I don't want to fuck this up. Cause I'm so junior, and I didn't want to ask the pilots, cause none of those chuckleheads know what we do in the back.
Don't know.
Yeah. I don't know anything. And so I'm getting stuff ready in the back, and I'm like, man, I hope this works. I'm triple checking everything. It seems like everything is going so damn slow. But it took us 22 minutes from start to end, 22 minutes. But as I was getting the litter ready, I thought that took me 45 minutes just to get the litter ready and the trail line assembly hooked up. It's just so ridiculous. So we get the trail line assembly hooked up, and we're coming in, another approach, lowering the litter. And he's like, I'm ready. Mike's on the deck with 4 other crewmen holding him, anchoring him while he's out. Like they're like, it looks like a snake of people holding Mike by the SAR-1, holding him out. The waters were so rough, and that ship was just all over the place. And the 2 cranes, right? So he comes out, picks up the trail line assembly. I don't do anything until I know that the rope is taut, and then I start lowering the litter, right? So I lower the litter, disconnect the litter, and then we take off and do another couple of laps, right? So it takes him, with the help of 4 other crewmen on the ship, they get him wrapped up in the litter and back down in no time. I can't even remember how long it took them, but I remember him calling back on the radio that he was ready for pickup. Survivors ready for pickup. So we come back around, we hover in. So this was our 3rd approach. And so Joey D hands the controls over to Ruben Ramos, this not even 2P qualified pilot. And I'm like, what?
This is not the time.
I get really nervous. And I'm like, what? And he goes, we got it. Beasley, we got it. And then we get in, and we hover, but the hover's not rock solid. But I'm like, I don't have time for this. So I lower the hook, but the whole time I'm looking around to see if the cranes are getting within distance, and I'm like, easy down 10 feet. And so we lower down 10 more feet, and the hook gets to the deck. He hooks him up, and then the trail line assembly comes up, and this ashen white faced Filipino dude takes a look at me and then closes his eyes really tight. And he's just like, either he's wincing in pain or he's like super scared because we're in a helicopter now, right?
Both.
So I get him inside, and I'm trying to be as gentle as possible.
This is a Foxtrot?
Foxtrot.
So you have the sonar and everything. So
it was fully trucked out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the sonar was gone. honestly, I don't remember if it was a Foxtrot or a hotel, but it was fully trucked out. So we
Okay.
had the ability to put the litter in. I have to go back and look at my logbook really to see what aircraft it was. But we get the litter in and we take off, right? So we come around and so Ruben's at the controls the whole time. So we're flying around, but we're like, I just remember this being a thing in my mind, but I didn't say this to Ruben until years afterwards. We're coming around for the last approach to pick Mike up, and he's cutting corners on the legs, right? He's just getting closer and closer to the ship as we're going around. And I said, I remember saying it to him. I said, "Widen your turn, sir." Like I know what I'm doing, right?
Right.
Like I'm just
tell me my
up in
business,
the
boy.
back, but I remember I don't want to get close to those stanchions, so I say, "Widen your turn, sir." He's like, "Roger that," and then he just widens his turn, and pretty soon we're like doing these racetracks, a football field away or 2 football fields away from the ship, and so finally, Mike says, "Ready for pickup," and then we come in for the pickup, and I'll remember this to the day I die. And Mike did this intentionally. We pick him up, and as he's coming up off the deck, he turns to the whole crew and he does this like Tom Cruise thumbs up signal to everybody on the ground as he's holding. He's like does this number, and I was like, "What the hell is that?" And then brought him up, and then I do my assessment. So before that, the survivors in the cabin, and I'm doing an assessment, and I'm speaking English to him, and he doesn't understand hardly anything I'm saying. I'm like, so I'm doing an assessment to him to check for bleeds. I do palpations to check to see for pain on his legs. And I look to see if he's still breathing, airway, ABCs, right? So I do that, and then I say, "Hey, you need to call back to the ship to have medical ready for next level care," because even though he's breathing and he's awake, he's falling asleep and his head's lolling back and forth. So not knowing, we're just there to try to keep him as alive as possible until someone who knows what they're doing, right? We know the basics of first responders, but we're not EMT. I wasn't an EMT at the time. So Mike comes aboard, and Mike helps me out with I ask him to do an assessment just to see if there's anything I miss, because we have like a 20-minute flight back to the ship. And so we land, we get back to the ship, and we have 9 survivors. Basically, we have this this chief engineer from a container ship, and then we have 8 survivors from a tug that sunk. And it just so happened that we had the battle group admiral on board the ship with us, Admiral Fitzgerald. And so after everybody's down to medical, all the survivors are down to medical, all the swimmers and crew chiefs and pilots for that matter, we all kind of meet up in medical and talk to the survivors. Anyway, all the ones that can speak English anyway. Yep. And we have a couple of sailors on board who speak Tagalog and translate, for us about what the chief engineer's condition is, and so they tell us that he did have possible broken vertebrae, but X-rays on the Kennedy at that time were not. I don't think either they had an X-ray machine, but it was down, or they needed to do an X-ray, so they did an initial survey. Like there was a doctor on board too on that particular debt. So going back to Admiral Fitzgerald, he was on board, and he was in the CSC. He's big, tall, 6'7", giant of an admiral, really gregarious, super smiley faced, and just I thought for an admiral, he doesn't act like an admiral. He's kind of, he's not standoffish at all. So he invites the entire HS-11 crews, all 3 crews, mixed to match, because we had to figure out for the last launch what we needed to do. invites us up to his stateroom, or the admiral's quarters, and we have steak and lobster on fine china.
Wow.
And people, like, there was a mess cook chief serving us, like, would be like, "What would you like, Petty Officer Beasley?" Like, over my shoulder. And in the Navy, a chief doesn't do that stuff. But in this instance, where we're being treated like we were VIPs, basically, the captain of the ship came down, said some words. Admiral said some words, and so we're just happy to have all these survivors on board. And then we go back, and it's all over the news. And on YouTube, there is a 60-minute segment with this entire crew about this rescue.
Wow, go check it out.
So we got interviewed by the guy with the deep voice. Bill Hader from SNL does a really good impersonation of this guy.
Is it the Dateline dude?
Yeah, the Dateline guy.
Okay.
So this was back in '96. So it we all drive over to Mayport, and we go into the hangar of one of the DDGs, and we get interviewed by him. And Shad, we get so the aftermath of this is that all 9 people survive, and there's a segment on 60 Minutes about how the rescue happened. It was pretty. We look at it as swimmers as being part of our job, but the aftermath of it was that this was no ordinary situation. And even though I was in the rescue that I was a part of was never mentioned in the news, but I don't begrudge that at all. Matter of fact, I'd rather it not be. It's a boring but very technical rescue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for people that don't know, it's just
it's not
hard to describe.
It's not fascinating. It's not you're not in the water as an individual battling the elements of the sea, swimming up to a raft without being hooked up to the. I to this day I still wonder why Shad disconnected and started swimming towards a raft instead of staying connected and being like doing the direction to the raft rather than unhooking 70 feet from the raft and then basically swimming to the raft, which is incredible. That's an incredible feat.
You make decisions at the moment and you don't question them. You move forward, and worst decision is no decision. And
that's right. But we all made it happen, or those guys made it happen for their rescues. But at the end of the day, we all get medals by the CNO. Rescue medals for all the swimmers, and commendation medals for all of the crew chiefs, and air medals for all the pilots, and a distinguished flying cross for Joey D'Angelo.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's amazing. That's awesome. Yeah, thanks for taking us through that. It's a long time ago, but it's still top of mind for sure.
I remember it like it was yesterday. Like every feeling that I had, some of the decisions that I made to as a watchstander, because those things you got to do, especially when the SDO is in this CIC doing their thing, and there's some decisions that need to be made as far as personnel goes, like who's doing what, when, and where. And the maintenance master chief came in and asked me, a third class, not even qualified TSO, like, who's gonna be the crew in the back of this next aircraft? We've got it ready to go. Who's going to be the crew? Yeah. And I was like, it's going to be me and Tunget, and pointed at Tunget. Yeah.
No, that's crazy. Yeah, and it's awesome that you're able to just tell the story, because for listeners, it's easy to think of the rescue swimmer exits the aircraft, and there's the story is right there, and there's so many components, so many other things that are going on, and in complete chaos, trying to find that calm. So even for you, I mean, think about the adrenaline of you're on watch, and there's a lot going on just from that perspective. And now guess what? There's another rescue we got to launch. And by the way, you're going, and then you're so close to, at any moment to a rotor strike, which then, takes down the aircraft if you're not meticulous in all that you're doing with all the environmentals, everything else. What do you think kept you personally calm in that chaotic situation?
Um, it was it sounds cliche, but it really, really helps to rely on the training that you go through. And the amount of training that we go through as crewmen and swimmers is is to the point where it becomes second nature. And so what kept me calm and all that is just going back to training. And the other thing too is am I doing the right thing?
Mhm.
Am I making the right, am I doing the steps right in the evolution of doing what I'm doing? And that always kept me calm in that situation. But at the same time, when we were getting the litter ready, I'd always look outside to see where those, we weren't we were flying, but always to see where the ship was and how close we were getting, because I knew who was flying, and
Mhm.
I trusted that. It's weird because I trusted Joey D'Angelo to the point where I didn't need to look outside. He knew what he was doing. But once the
Mhm.
controls went over to Rumen, I felt like I
Yeah.
needed to like look outside, and we did cut corners. And I felt, but later in years down the road when I was having this conversation with him, do you remember me telling you that to widen our turns, sir? And he goes, yeah, I do. I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, who is this guy? But I'm going to do what he says because he's going to be controlling how we get into the situation. So it's uh, yeah. Just to answer your question, I think it I relied a lot on training to keep me calm in that situation where you needed to have calm and not freak out.
And that's why there's such a high attrition rate. I mean, you weed out the ones that are not going to remain calm. Ultimately, everything comes down to that calm. If you can't remain calm in the most chaotic situation that's ever thrown at you, even if it's, you're teetering on death, you're no good to anyone because you put yourself and others at risk, and you're literally trying to save lives. So it's not for everyone. And honestly, until you're put into those situations, even if you've had the training and you've passed, some people will break, and you never truly know what you're capable of until you are pushed to that limit.
Yeah, I fully agree with that.
Well, Bill, man, you've had incredible experiences, a long career. You're still doing amazing things. Throughout all of this, what is a bit of wisdom that you're going to leave our listeners with?
There's three things that I think are important in going through um, a tough time, tough training, tough evolution. Is that if you want it bad enough, your body will follow you no matter what. So if you have the mindset that you're going to finish something, your body will absolutely follow that to make it happen. The second thing is that don't worry about what anybody else says to you. Um, Make it happen. Figure it out and make it happen. So don't worry about the noise. Don't worry about what people say. Don't worry about what's happening outside of your world. If you want something, make it happen. Get after it. And the last thing is that nobody truly knows. Um, Nobody truly knows what one's limits are, but it's up to you to figure that out. And if you're able to push the limit of what you're capable of doing, you can do amazing things.
Yeah, yeah, it's such good advice. So true on so many levels. And I hope the listeners will just, take a little bit of that and just, see what you're capable of. I'm not saying like be dangerous, walk the line, but don't play it so safe because, we're wired for so much more than we think that we're capable of doing. And I think you and I both are fortunate to have the military and the training that we've had and the experiences we've had to kind of see where we're at, and we know that, and it helps evolve our walk, in this thing called life. Whereas there's just so many people out there that just play it safe, and I don't know, maybe that's good for them, but I feel like there's so much more, and it can just really just create this motivation and drive and purpose for everyone's life.
Yeah, this life is not for the life we led in our past. It's not for everyone. And I truly think it's a combination of a mental fortitude and physical ability. The mental fortitude helps in the physical ability part because, like I said before, if you want it, your body will follow, no doubt. And having that mindset and whatever I remember before I went through rescue training, being in the Navy, that was never even a thought in my head. Just do what you need to do, follow orders, get the job done, be done. But being pushed to the limit or being pushed to capabilities that I didn't think I was capable of, and remembering that thing in my head that if I really want it, my body will follow.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing. Bill, thanks so much for hanging out and blessing our listeners with your amazing stories and experiences. And yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you, Brian. I've read about your adventures climbing the seven summits, and truly inspiring words, and an excellent read, by the way. And I appreciate you reaching out and offering this platform for us as swimmers. And even though I feel like I've done this a lifetime ago. It's always good to remember that I was at one point capable of doing some really, really cool stuff.
Yeah, you still are. It looks different.
Yeah, it just looked different.
Cool. Well, thank you. And for everyone else, we will see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Calm in the Chaos podcast. Please subscribe to be notified of future episodes. And if you enjoyed what you just heard, please leave a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts. Until next time, get out there and make a difference so others may live.